How does it feel to potentially be one of the healthiest women in the world right now?
I have so much imposter syndrome about that. It's probably been about a year and a half now. When I first, overnight, jumped 2 feet into doing female protocol, it was that question of what would happen if someone implements Bryan's protocol and they are a different age and they're also a different sex.
Kate Tolo is the first woman to test Bryan Johnson's blueprint, pushing the limits of science to see if his anti-aging protocol works for women.
How do you deal with an intense protocol? Because women's hormones flux.
A lot of people don't even know where they're at in the cycle, what that impact has on their health. If you know that when you have these cravings, you can actually relate to it.
Do you have these moments of urges, of cravings?
I might have some more berries.
Do you still feel a bit ostracized? Are there things that you miss?
Honestly, don't feel ostracized. Occasionally I'll still have the urge to be fuck it, let's just go wild. I was literally having this urge last week and I was like, maybe I should have a die day.
How have you dealt with putting yourself out in the public?
All of the more negative comments, I view them as kind of expected.
You really play into kind of the negative comments and even kind of calling it a cult.
In fact, I'd probably call us a religion. If anything, we're a lifestyle of behaviors. We're a belief system. Instead of promising the afterlife, we're promising a longer this life.
So for someone listening to this, especially as a woman, what are the 3 things that they should implement to support their health?
Firstly, I
want to say thank you to tuning in and listening to the show. It means a huge amount. And connecting with all of you is something that I absolutely love as part of this journey of growing the show. One of my biggest goals of 2025 is doubling the reach of this show. And I can't do that without your support. So I would love to ask you a favor. If you can press subscribe or follow on whichever platform you listen to. This helps us reach more people. And for me, elevating women in science is so fundamental and ethical and scientific information. So if you feel the show empowers you and gives you the information that you've been seeking, I would love to ask a favor in return and to hit that subscribe button and help me reach the goal that I've set for the show of 2025. Thank you. Kate.
Hi.
Welcome to Live Well Be Well. I'm
Thank
so
you.
happy to have you here.
I'm happy to be here. I really appreciate you making time because I know that we were going back and forth on scheduling, so it's great.
Were. I'm really happy. And I want to kind of start by, how does it feel to potentially be one of the healthiest women in the world right now?
I have so much imposter syndrome about that. I'm sure that's not true. I'm sure. I am on a 10-year journey with my health, probably a 50-year journey, realistically. So I think I struggle health is an endless black hole. And so for me, I'm no matter how far deep I go down, there's always an infinite hole to go down.
So I'm going to start by, how old are you right now?
I am 28 years. Wait, I'm 29 years old. I always forget.
So you're 29.
Yes.
You are the co-founder and CMO of Blueprint,
That's
which
right.
is Bryan Johnson's company,
Yes.
where he is looking at how he can basically not die and have an extension of many healthy, happy years.
Yes.
First of all, how long have you been on this blueprint for XX? Because I interviewed Bryan 2 years ago now, maybe more, 2.5.
Something like that.
And during that conversation, I brought up, this is amazing that you're doing this and putting it out publicly. That's something I do admire. It's putting out health information to the public for him, and he's using his own money to do so. But then I was like, how is this going to translate to a woman? Women's health is so different to a man's health. And he said, well, we've got XX coming up, but I don't know who we're going to have.
Yeah.
And you weren't on the scene at this point.
Yeah.
And now I'm so excited to talk to you about the women's version of this.
Yeah.
So first of all, what drew you to do this? That's my first question. And also alongside that, how long have you been doing it now?
So it's probably been about a year and a half now of since that, when I first overnight jumped 2 feet into doing the female protocol. And literally it was that question. It was that question of what would happen if someone implements Bryan's protocol and they are a different age and they're also a different sex. So being, I think at the time it was 27-year-old female. And I essentially just adopted his entire routine without changing anything else. I took a few less supplements than he was taking, but by and large, it was the same protocol.
Okay. And at what moment did you say, I'm going to do this? Because it's intense. So the protocol, when I was speaking to him, which was 2.5 years ago, and I know it's different now. He was on 100 supplements then. I know he's on 20 now.
Yeah.
His eating window was 4 hours. He was basically testing everything on himself at the very beginning. But he does now have a very strict protocol. Now he has engaged community more into it. Back then he hadn't engaged any of that. So I think he started to like analyze like where are the things that was missing. But for you, when you started, what did the protocol look like, and how does it look now?
Yeah.
And what difference have you seen in the year and a half?
Yeah. So Bryan and I started Blueprint together, and I've always been in the background making the wheels move. And same time that he was going through this intense protocol, I was literally eating McDonald's at 10 p.m. at night. Like that was my default. The people at the McDonald's near my place knew me. They knew my face. They were like, yo, like, what's up? Like, they didn't know my name because I kept it secret from them. But they, like, knew me. So I was, like, I could not be further away from the typical LA wellness person at that time.
Wow. Okay.
That's why I say I have an imposter syndrome, because I'm just like, that's who I still feel like I am deep down inside. I'm not someone who innately looks after self. And so obviously, in the back of my mind, I was always like, I probably should look after myself better. And I probably should do all these things. And at the same time, Bryan was getting all this notoriety, and we were getting a lot of women being like, what about a female? And to get someone else to do Bryan's protocol is almost nearly impossible. People want to volunteer all the time. It is so hard to bring someone up. It's also incredibly hard to like track their measurements. Like they really need to be present at all times, like access the machinery, access to measurement, availability, you know, with everything else that's going on in life. And so there's this like thing, there's this problem of like women wanting something for themselves. I'm behind the scenes, not looking after myself. I'm also the only person who's like in proximity to Bryan every single day. That created this environment where it made sense for me to do it. And so it was this huge moment of like, am I really going to take this on? And so, yeah, I think it was inevitable. At some point, I was going to change my lifestyle, and it felt like the right time to do it. And it felt like it would be a cool public service to share it with everyone.
Okay, so how has your health data changed? Let's just start there. There's so many questions I want to go into, the emotional side and everything, but for literally right now, for being a year and a half in, what have you seen change?
Yeah. So the funny thing about this as well is that I still see myself as an unhealthy person. Like it's just like so deeply ingrained in me that
in what way?
I just, like I said, health is an endless rabbit hole. And so I just feel like you can always be doing more. And I feel like that's a trap that you can fall into. And so I try to avoid that thinking. But so for example, I was in San Diego last week for a treatment, and Bryan and Talmadge decided to come visit me, like surprise me. And I didn't know they were coming, and they came in with a film crew into my like little room where I was getting the treatment. And I was like, oh, like, what's in the room? Like, because, you know, I was so in my own space at that point that I was like, I'd really just like, relaxed. And I'm always someone that does not like being seen. And so it was like, oh my gosh, where? And then I look around and I've got my like air quality monitor. I've got all my Blueprint stuff. I've got my resistance bands. I've got my supplement. Like I'm like, my life could not look more different than it did like 4 or 5 years ago. Like my default norm now for what I consider like day-to-day life is just like exponentially better. Yeah. So I feel like that's a big marker. And like for me, experiencing that moment, I was like, wow, I really have changed, and like came face to face with that in that moment, which was really cool. But yeah, marker wise, I mean, I think probably one of the biggest things that I've seen consistently improve was my restorative sleep. So now I wake up every morning and I have my like sleep checklist. So I check like my deep, my REM, and my resting heart rate, and my HRV, the whole shebang. I wake up and check my temperature in the morning, make sure I know where I'm at in my cycle. Yeah. So
this is a big one.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just go straight in, because this is so important for women's health. Mm-hmm. So I am on the first day of my period today, and I feel like utter shit.
Yes.
I have so much brain fog. So if I'm not sharp in this interview, there's an exact reason why. And we were meant to do this interview last Friday, and actually, you know, you actually weren't very well, which might be a surprise to people. Like you were sick. How are you sick on this Blueprint protocol? Yeah. So many questions to dive into. But we've done it a week later, just before I fly back to London. And obviously, I wouldn't normally schedule something on the first day of my period for very obvious reasons. I've woken up, I feel bloated, I'm in a lot of pain, I feel nauseous. Yeah. You know, so for me this morning, I was like, I just want to grab something that's quick release of sugar. I want to have loads of coffee. You know, people might be listening to this thinking that I always eat a healthy diet. Like, I try to have the 80-20 rule, but I go with my body, how it intuitively feels. And right now I needed something to get me through this morning.
Yes.
How do you deal with a intense protocol around your cycle.
Yeah.
Do you stick to this like perfect protocol every day? Like, because women's hormones flux and they really impact how you feel.
100%. Yeah. No, I'm not perfect. And the other thing is like Bryan is doing something extreme. Like he's doing something for himself that's like extreme. Like the expectation is not for other people to do this. So I don't want anyone to witness what he's doing and be like feeling like they aren't. Everyone should just be doing their best in the moment and just treat themselves with grace. So I would be with you in that moment of like waking up and feeling like shit and you just want something easy. Totally get it. So yeah, and then on top of that, I think just knowing where a lot of people don't even know where they're at in the cycle and like what that impact has on their health. And so then if you know that, at least like when you have these cravings, you can actually relate to it in a way where you can understand. So for example, your first day period, I ovulated last night. So we're in the exact opposite side of the cycle
you
spectrum.
You're going to sound so much smarter than me today.
I do feel particularly good. My HRV is up. I had great sleep. I always sleep horribly on my like first day of my period.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is real, and we should treat ourselves with grace and kindness in these moments of like acknowledging it's not something you can just like control. It's sometimes it's out of your control.
So let's go to last month when you were menstruating, when you had your first bleed day. What was your day like?
So the way to think about cycle, or the way I think about it anyway, and you can go again, rabbit hole information, but the top level is, so you have your follicular phase, which is, you already know this, but like for everyone at home, the first day of your period really starts that phase. So your period's in two phases, your follicular and your luteal. I like to think of follicular like fuck yeah, like follicular, let's fucking go. And so that whole period, that first half, starting from the first day of your period until ovulation, you should really push yourself. You have more insulin resistance, so you can handle carbs better. You can really like push yourself and like go a little bit harder. Once you start ovulating and then through to the end of your cycle, like that's recovery time, rest time. And so right around this time where you're transitioning between the two, like I treat myself with so much care. And so if I don't feel like exercising that day, I don't push myself. Like also physically, like you're just, I don't know about you, but like I'm just uncomfortable. Like I'm cramping. I don't really feel comfortable pushing myself while I'm bleeding. And so oftentimes I'll just have like a rest day on those days.
Okay. And do you change your diet? Like, do you have these moments of urges, of cravings, where you're like, I actually really want to have something? Because when I spoke to Talmadge on here, or Bryan, they're like, no, nothing is worth the compromise. And I feel like you are actually, I will grab some chocolate if needed. Or are you not like that?
I play within the sandbox.
Okay.
So like I might have some more berries, which I know it's depressing, but it's taken me a long time to even get there. Like before I would have the chocolate or whatever else. But now I do know that ultimately that's going to have a negative impact. It depends on what time it is. Like if I'm craving chocolate and it's in the morning, then I'll just have like an extra scoop of cocoa, which will have more heavy metals for my day than I should be having. But like that's my sandbox playing. But like I won't go for the chocolate that has like added sugars, for example. But again, like took me many years to get there, and I'm sure I'm going to also fall back off that bandwagon at some point, come back on. Like I'm not perfect by any means. So
yeah. So I guess like for you, it's keeping within the wheelhouse of whole foods.
Yes, exactly.
But you aren't tracking your macros so intensely that you will reduce your calorie intake.
Correct.
To get the data. Because I think I heard you, like, because you haven't done that many interviews.
Yes.
So I was trying to like grasp what I could from, because I haven't met you before, right? So I'm trying to like understand, what's the intensity of Kate's protocol, and obviously I watched Don't Die. And I felt that from one of the interviews that you did, you were so aware that you were given this chance to have this experiment, and you wanted to not let Bryan down, the team down, the world down, because you're the first woman. I mean, it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Right? And I watched that and I just thought, so my science and what I'm really obsessed with is how we talk to ourselves. So
what did you observe?
So I observed. I'll tell you what I observed.
Tell me.
So the intersection of what I observed was, okay, you're having this like perfect diet, quote, if you're watching this on YouTube, like my quotation marks are coming up. No one can argue with the whole foods diet, okay? I mean, I'm not sure what your fasting restrictions are, and that's again something that maybe we could talk about, especially with the cycle. Like Stacey Sims will say, if you're exercising, Dr. Stacey Sims, who's an incredible nutritionist and physiologist, will say, make sure you have breakfast in the morning and then train. So there's a lot of like controversy around fasting and training and women's health. But you can have this perfect lifestyle. But then if you are beating yourself up every day, the self-critical lens, which is where I was when I was modeling, I had the perfect diet.
100%.
Right? And I ended up in hospital.
Yeah.
Because the self-criticism of not being perfect.
It overrides everything else.
Overrides everything. My cortisol, my stress hormones. And yeah, we do need cortisol to rise. We need it to get shit done in very small quantities. But if we're living a life of like the stress, it dampens our immune system and all of these things.
Yeah.
So I was kind of observing that. And this was about a year ago you had this interview. And I was thinking, you know, will she actually be affecting the data? Because she's got a self-critical lens of wanting to make sure that she's doing the right job.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
which is literally what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk to me about this.
Like that 30-day period where I first started and I jumped 2 feet in and like changed my lifestyle overnight. Like cold turkey, completely different human. I ended up, so I was doing 16 minutes of zone 5 training every single day during that time, which is just a lot for someone who didn't exercise before that.
And tell people quick, because people have heard of zone 2, but just explain what zone 5 is for the extremity of what you're actually saying.
So essentially it's as high as you can get your heart rate up. Pretty much, you can summarize that. And so like everyone, like as you age, your heart rate, your max heart rate decreases. For me, my zone 5 was anything above 173 beats per minute. So it's just like, it's all, your heart is going.
16 minutes. God, did you not throw up?
I know. It was like so much. It was so much. And I, you know, I always want to do the best job I can. And so I pushed myself too much during that time period where I wasn't listening to the data. I was just pushing for the sake of pushing, like similar to probably how you were going about your modeling journey. And so, yeah, it really takes stepping back and looking at the data and that's the same thing. Even all the fasting around women's health and all these contrarian opinions around women's health in general, if you just follow your data, if you just get good data reliably, you'll be guided internally more than these bucket rules that can apply, especially when there isn't that much science on women's health specifically out there. And so like I always say, like, just go back to the data.
Let me tell you about OneSkin and why I'm genuinely fascinated by what they're doing. Founded by all-women team scientists, OneSkin is a skincare brand that's redefining how we age. And you can get 15% off your first order using code LWBW. What's caught my attention is their groundbreaking approach to skin health at a cellular level. Instead of masking the signs of aging, OneSkin tackles the problem at its root with this OS01 peptide. Here's how it works. As we age, our skin accumulates senescent cells, or zombie cells, that speed up aging in healthy cells, causing wrinkles and loss of elasticity. OneSkin's OS01 peptide is scientifically proven to target these cells, reversing your skin's biological age for healthier, more resilient skin. This isn't about chasing eternal youth. It's about maintaining a strong, healthy skin at any age. And since your skin is the body's largest organ, keeping it healthy is key to your overall well-being. So if you want to see what the science of longevity can do for your skin, visit oneskin.co/LWBW and use code LWBW for 15% off your first order. So emotionally, what happened after those 30 days? Like, did you crash? Did you have a breakdown? Like, what happened?
So we answered the question, does Bryan's protocol work in someone else of different gender, different age? The answer is yes. Like, it does. Broccoli, exercise, sleep, it's fantastic for everyone. It's good to go. After that point, it was like, okay, so now if I'm going to keep doing this, I need to find the right balance for myself, psychologically, lifestyle-wise, all that kind of stuff. So I've kind of been going through this journey of finding my balance. And I think I'm someone, like I said, I'm a student of the mind. Like, I love understanding people. And so I'm very realistic in knowing that we are individuals that are so impacted by the way we think, the emotions we feel. So I always knew going into this that I was never going to be able to be perfect forever.
But you can't, because that's not being human.
Yeah, that's
right?
My experience. Totally. I'm a chaotic.
Yeah.
I'm a chaotic. I'm a creative. I want to stay up late. I want to do bad things. I want to throw a grenade into my life sometimes and like just see what happens. Like that's totally me. So that's why I mean about the sandbox. And I think, I don't know about you, but this is happiness as well to me, that you operate within the constraints of your environment. And you will find happiness and sadness and highs and lows and crashes, no matter what your environment is. When you're placed into it, like you just go in the sandbox and you find the edges. And so I knew that the goal here was not to be perfect. I'm always going to have highs and lows. I'm always going to feel like I'm screwing up and being successful. But the goal is to create a sandbox environment where generally it's 10 times healthier than I was before. And that's where I'm at now after a year and a half of doing this.
I think that's really helpful for people to hear, because I think, how Bryan puts his data out, it's very much like, this is the intensity of what I live by. And I will not cross any border.
Yeah.
I will not go an inch outside of what my protocol is.
Yes.
Because I have to stick to that.
And that's who he is.
Yeah.
And the mission that he is someone who's extremely unique. He's also trying to be someone like Amelia Earhart, who's proving something's possible for the first time ever. And so he's set himself this larger than life objective, larger than his own personal even desires, objectives. Like, if we zoom out for a second, we are born and we are not given an operating manual for our bodies.
Or our minds. I'm just going to say that.
True. And our minds are so much further off from measurement than our bodies that that's even a bigger problem to tackle. Like, we can't even share experiences and consciousness and even feel like we truly understand one another. At least we can compare cholesterol levels, But it's kind of crazy. Like, we have access to data. We know what's right and what's wrong, quote unquote, like what's healthy and what's unhealthy. And yet nobody gives us this manual when we're born. And it takes us our whole lives trying to figure that out. And most of us don't even get to page 2 in that manual. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create an operating manual that you don't need to do it all, but at least you know what you could be doing. And you don't want to do it 100%, that's cool. Do it 20%, do it 30%, do it 40%, whatever you feel like is right for you. But here's a book on how to do it. And so Bryan is doing it to the 100% so that somebody proves out what the manual is when someone does it to 100%. But that's not for everyone.
Yeah. I guess what I would hear people saying to this, down the other end of people listening to our conversation.
Are you scrolling through the YouTube comments right now?
Yeah, I'm literally going through because I'm I understand the extremity of what you're trying to show, and this is to have the best lifestyle ever. From a public health perspective of someone who works in public health, hardly anyone can eat 5 of their 5 a day. Or you look at the food pyramid in America, people don't eat their fruits and vegetables here. So I feel like we're shouting to 2 different audiences. We're shouting to the longevity kind of culture who will try anything and adapt anything and have, an elitist amount of money to shapeshift things that are perfect for them in their routine. And then you've got everyone else. And everyone else is literally struggling to get through everyday life and struggling to have 5 of their 5 a day is what we say in the UK. Or, and I know from public health data, we should be having 9 different vegetables a day to be getting a good health outcome. But we can't say that because it scares people off. And so people then feel already defeated. Yeah. And I think maybe what the cross-pollination of the research that you guys are bringing out is, one, yes, it's really showing that a good whole foods diet is the way to go to get good sleep. But you've got the basics in there. Yeah. But sometimes with the overload of data, people can go, well, this feels so far from me that there's no even point me getting on that journey. 100%. And I think that's where the disparity can come from, where people feel that it's so extreme and can be so expensive. And I say that because I was at a talk yesterday for the longevity, and I know I really want you to have your kind of response, but somebody came on stage, and it's somebody who I admire, so I don't want to call them out, but they said, we're going to give you the 3 top tips for women's health, and guess what? It costs nothing. And I was like, I wonder where they're going to go with this. And then she literally started speaking about sleep, and they're like, get an Oura ring to track your, to track your sleep. And then, or you could be getting this amazing exercise machine. But they started off by saying it was free. But we can talk about sleep, but then actually to the degrees of where they got to, it does cost money. Yeah. So I think that's if we're really trying to get people to actually change and become connected to their health, there is still this huge kind of disparity of the access that people can get.
Okay, so we've identified the problem. Yeah. Which is that the world is set up in a way that's bad for your health, and the individual is very powerless in that situation. So then it's okay, how do we solve that problem? And let's just imagine we give ourselves 100 years to do this, which is an enormous amount of time. Yeah. We have 3 things to figure that out. Yeah. One is understanding what should the world be like in an optimal state. The second is creating demand that people actually want the world to be like that. And then the third is creating the infrastructures for things to be like that. So right now we have McDonald's for infrastructure. People demand Ben and Jerry's ice cream, and they have absolutely no idea what to do. Like, people don't know what foods to avoid. They'll debate it into eternity, and people will just be like, I don't know, carnivore, vegan, like blah 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 blah. Seed oils, no seed oils. So like, we're trying to systematically solve these three things at once. Along the journey is going to be chaos. Like, people are going to feel overwhelmed. That's why it's like it's okay, just one day at a time. Like, I'm sorry the world is like this. It's not cool. But like, let's try and figure this out as a group. And so Bryan's trying to be the optimal person to figure it out. We're trying to create the demand. So small education pieces. Like, for example, I was talking to my brother once, and he was like considering, I think, like what ice cream flavor to have at night. And he was like, I'm going to have like chocolate. And I was like, oh, maybe you shouldn't because it has caffeine in it. And he's like, chocolate doesn't have caffeine. I was like, yeah. Oh, no. Yes, it does. Like, I'm so sorry. Because, that's so, for me, common knowledge because I'm so conscious of my sleep being affected. But a lot of people don't know the basics of these little things. And so, okay, like maybe with that little bit of information, we can create demand that maybe chocolate becomes more of a morning thing for me, which is what's happened with my cocoa. And then the systems, like, we should be boycotting McDonald's. We should be having, creating enough demand that the Sweet Greens and the health food stores that are available here in LA make it to these food deserts in the middle of America. So it's a big, hairy problem. And like, we do need to tackle it. And like, through the process, it's going to be hairy. It's going to be ugly. That's why we accept the hate that comes our way, because we just see it on this like bigger time horizon where we know that in order to change society and humanity, it does take a lot of iterations of thought. And I don't know about you, like you saw Bryan from the very early days. How much has the world changed since then?
So much. Bryan's changed a lot. When I watched him on the documentary, he seemed fundamentally quite a different person.
Yeah.
I have to say, from who I first interviewed 2.5 years ago.
Yeah. He's the same, and he just learned how to find his place in being public online, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's so it takes time, but it also takes less time than you think. And so all of that minutiae about the arguments and the upset, and like, it's kind of just like being with a child and we're the children, right? Like, of humanity, like us. And we're just thrashing a little bit as we go through change, and that's okay, and it'll be okay.
So talk me through your day, because you've come here today with a very similar Live Well Be Well colour mug, which I quite like. But
all I need is the slogan.
We'll give you one. We'll get you one. I feel like it's a more connective logo than Don't Die. Live Well Be Well.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. Like, a lot of people don't love Don't Die. Don't blame them.
So what's in this that you're drinking?
So in here I have macadamia nut milk, extra virgin olive oil, cocoa for the flavonols, manuka honey, mushrooms. I think that's it.
Okay, I can't believe you didn't bring me one.
I know, I'm sorry. I should have. That would have been so thoughtful of me.
The taste test would have been great.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is now, early afternoon. So what's your morning routine been like? What have you had to eat today, and when did you start? And give me the full breakdown.
So I go from when I went to sleep. So I usually go to sleep around 10:30, and I usually wake up around 7:30, trying to get a full 8 hours of actually being asleep in bed. I then do some resistance training, flexibility training, and some cardio in the morning when I first wake up. I then take my supplements, which I used to take 60. Now I take 8, which is really nice.
Can I ask what the 8 are?
Yeah, it's actually the Blueprint stack. So essentially we took Bryan's 100 pills. We took out everything that isn't applicable for literally everyone on planet Earth, with some minor exceptions like pregnancy and children and all that kind of stuff. But mostly everyone, all ages, all genders, etc. And we condensed them into as few pills as we could. And we also made it into a drink. So it's like longevity mixed drink, which is like a pink drink that's delicious, and then 8 pills. So it's much easier than the 60.
And the 8 pills are?
It's essential capsules, essential soft gels, red yeast rice, garlic, turmeric, so many things. Taurine, lysine, creatine, like a whole amalgamation of things. All collapse into like combination pills.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you'll have that?
Yes.
After you train?
After. For me personally. Yeah.
And
then so I have
what time do you wake up?
7:30 a.m.
Okay.
Ish.
This is better than Bryan's 5.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, that's his choice, but you don't actually need to wake up early. You just pick a consistent bedtime, try and get quality sleep, and then you're good.
Okay.
So, I'm someone who used to stay up till 3 a.m., 2 a.m.
Okay.
So
So
10:30 is like
7:30 I can do. 7:30.
Yeah,
I get up
exactly.
at 7, so
Yeah.
I can do that.
Same. Yeah,
Okay.
cool.
So 7:30, workout,
Yep.
supplements.
Yep.
Then
Usually I make myself some sort of drink like this. So like, oh, I forgot collagen's in here as well. So yeah, I have my collagen usually in a drink form like this because I find it easier to drink. I get icked out by the textural thing of collagen. So that's how I have this. So I'll usually have this. And this is around 300 calories. So it's like almost my first meal. And then, an hour or so later, I'll have my super veggie with a little bit of extra virgin olive oil as well. And then
talk me through the super veggie for people who don't know what that is.
Okay, it's like a very healthy vegetable meal. It has a base of lentils, then it's cauliflower, broccoli, maitake mushrooms, ginger, apple cider vinegar, hemp seeds. I'm sure I'm forgetting some other things, but like
Wow.
super veggie, self-explanatory.
Yeah. I think Talmadge turned up with a merch t-shirt of super veggie.
I was almost gonna wear that, and I was like, in my head, I was like,
upset you didn't bring me one.
Oh, that was. What I'm learning is I didn't bring enough gifts. That's what I'm learning. I should have done that. I was actually going to wear that shirt, and then I thought to myself, I was like, I bet Talmadge wore that shirt.
He wore that shirt.
So that's why I didn't. And then, a couple hours later, I'll have nutty pudding, which is...
This is the cocoa?
No cocoa in this one, because I usually have it later in the day. The cocoa I'll put in here.
Okay.
But this is like a protein... berries, pomegranate juice, macadamia nuts, walnuts, flaxseed, sunflower lesson, a few other things I'm probably also forgetting. But it's like a smoothie, a berry smoothie, you can think of it as. And then, I wrap up eating by latest 5 p.m., latest. So I try and eat as early as I can, but obviously throughout the day, things push. So I try to be done by 5 so I can get enough time in for my digestion to be complete by the time I go to bed at 10:30.
Great. I feel like this is a much more easy one to relate to.
Yes.
I mean, some people eat with their children at 5. Eating earlier is much better for you. So I feel like that's a more relatable lifestyle to lead.
Yeah.
I guess the only moments are that when a woman's period comes up or you have those moments where you feel that you need maybe something a bit additional, that's where people might struggle. Yeah. But I think the biggest area, which I'd be really interested in, I know you've adapted it and I know that you're really connected to your friends and your community, but like, how do you fit this in with a lifestyle of a 29-year-old? Because so much about, I mean, I don't even know if you're in a relationship, but like so much about being this age is like going out, maybe meeting somebody in a night out or going to a dinner party or these kind of things that we do a lot more when we're younger and much more sociable.
Yeah.
How do you fit that lifestyle in with your age and being a woman and, all the wonderful things that come with a community and friendships and things like that?
Connecting with people is really about just being in the same space with them. And then the things we do just change across time depending on what the zeitgeist is. So like when you're in your 20s, you might go clubbing more. And then as you age, you might be hanging out with your friends' kids and etc. So my friends have been very accommodating. And they're also like, I think everyone's on this health journey right now. And so me being as health conscious as I am helps them also be their best selves too. And I'm kind of like probably annoying in a lot of ways to them because it's like, depending on if we're going to go out, I'll need to at least have some like side options on the menu that I could order, like a side of vegetables or berries. Sometimes I'll have like fruit and that kind of stuff. So at least I can like have something at the table, like avocado on the side, etc. So I make those kind of accommodations where I won't be ordering from the menu, which is like highly optimized for taste. I'll be like making my own meal essentially from side dishes. Things like I'll get there, and oftentimes restaurants will be insanely loud on the inside and you don't even realize it. And so I'll check my decibel meter. I'll make sure that we're not experiencing hearing damage, which is crazy that we have to go out of our way to check that. That's just like not standard. And then we'll move seats if it's too, or like I don't sit in the sun, for example. I try to avoid sitting outside at the moment in LA because the air quality is so bad. It's usually pretty bad. So minor adjustments like that. But like my friends are like, cool, like thank God. Otherwise we would have been experiencing hearing loss and damage. And they're just also like nice people. So
yeah,
they're very accommodating.
I mean, the sun thing I'm a big advocate of anyway, because of, keep yourself young and skin cancer. But I guess like I'm just trying to be devil's advocate here.
Please.
And like do both sides, Somebody would then maybe listen to this and say, well, if you're obsessing around the hearing quality and the food and the sun, like are you, although that, yes, this is optimizing your health, are you essentially like de-optimizing moments which could also bring your health up because your enjoyment levels are up? So, I guess 5 years ago, you wouldn't have been aware of, sitting in a restaurant and doing that maybe once or twice a month. Is that going to actually have an impact on your hearing, or is it actually just going to decrease the quality of like enjoyment in that moment because you're so acutely aware of these things?
Yeah. I think we all make decisions on what's worth it and what's not worth it. And so I make decisions on what's worth it. So for example, the hearing loss thing, that's like a genuine, like I don't think people, so you and I can talk about skin and we say the sun and like we get each other. We're like I'm avoiding the sun, you're avoiding the sun, because we've learned enough for it to hit this priority level within ourselves where we don't even need to question it. And that's the cool thing is like you and I are on the same page. So like if we went to a restaurant, we would avoid sitting in the sun. It would suck if I was with a friend and they were like, I really want to sit in the sun right now. And I'm like, okay, well maybe we can just get like an umbrella. It's like half in, half shade, And so for you maybe hearing doesn't hit that level yet. But once you know the data on it, just like with the skin, like you can't avoid it. And so like if you're over 80 decibels and you're in this period for a long period of time, like you will experience hearing loss. And the worst part about it is it's permanent. Like that's the hardest thing about hearing is like once you lose it, it's we haven't found data on how you can get it back. Skin, like you can do lasers and it's not perfect. You can do lasers, you can take collagen, you can even go more extreme routes like surgical and get a facelift, for example. Hearing, if you're going to be around for 100 years, like you want to preserve that. I also wonder with things like hearing, like once you start to lose that, how much does that affect your sensory input of the people around you? Like, have you ever been around someone who has poor hearing and you almost feel like they're not able to keep up in the same way? I'm not talking about like things that maybe you're born with or you develop across time, but just like as you get older, being around people who are older and have hearing issues, like it's a different experience where you have to then communicate louder for them and they're having a harder time hearing you. For me, I find that to be a really sad experience. I just want it to be seamless. Yeah. And so I'm trying to protect for this like really long arc because I know how serious it is. And I think if everyone had access to that information, they would too. But I agree, it's always a trade-off. And so I'm constantly making decisions where I'm like,
is that worth it? Is it not worth it?
Yeah, like I'll go walk around the Venice canals and I know that maybe the UV is like 4, so it's not really bad, but it's not great. So I know I'm experiencing some skin damage, but I'm like, okay, it's fine.
Yeah,
it's
what to live my life to some extremes. Right?
Yeah.
Is there parts that you miss of your old life, or do you sometimes feel like ostracized? I know that your friends seem very supportive, which is amazing, but you still must have this part where you do still feel a bit ostracized. Like, are there things that you miss?
I honestly don't feel ostracized because I feel like my community genuinely already matches, but I definitely miss things about like, so I used to live in New York and that place is amazing. I love New York. And I was someone who was like going out, doing questionable things, drinking during those time periods. And they are some of my most fondest memories. Like I loved that time period in life. So occasionally I'll still have like the urge to be like, fuck it, let's just like go wild. I was literally having this urge last week and I was like, maybe I should have like a die day where like one day of the year I just like,
can you please do that?
Go crazy. Yeah. Like, and maybe that is the solution is like occasionally we do that. Yeah, I'm still figuring that out, but like of course. And it's always a trade-off. Like no matter where you are at the spectrum, you're always making that decision making.
Do you feel that this is, I guess you'd have to, I don't know if you're in a relationship, but how do you feel about, are you in a relationship or not?
Yeah, I am.
I
don't talk about it publicly because my partner, long-term partner, been together for approaching 7 years.
So he's been through your change.
Yes. In fact, we met in New York. So it's like,
wow,
really seen it all. But yeah, he's a very private person.
Yeah.
He's just someone who like does not enjoy the spotlight. And so that's why I don't talk about him much.
Have you influenced his health routines?
So he's someone that thinks about something a lot before making a decision. And he was like me where we had really bad health habits. We were eating McDonald's together. He would eat ramen all the time out of like those like plastic thick cups. And it made it really hard sometimes to have shared experiences when I was transitioning into this more healthy phase. He's just finally been like 180 and like gone full health.
Wow.
And he's doing amazing. Like I struggled so much to make that transition because he thought about it for so long before making he just like slipped into it and was like all good. And so now he's prioritizing health, which in turn makes my life way easier. It was manageable always, like having the different lifestyles, but like now it's fun because we get to be like optimizing things together, you know?
And do you sleep separately? Do you sleep in the same bed?
Separately.
Yeah, I was wondering if that's because sleep
I am
is the biggest thing.
Huge advocate of it.
Are
Huge.
you?
Huge,
okay,
huge,
tell
huge,
me.
huge, huge. I just think that it's a societal thing that we share the same bed. I think if we can, like we actually sleep in the same room, but just 2 separate mattresses. So even people who are constrained sometimes like with space, like you can't still make it work. And I just like think there's a big stigma around it. I remember growing up and thinking if your parents don't sleep in the same bed, something's wrong, you know? And so I just think there's a huge stigma. I think it's incredible to sleep separately, like so much better.
Because of the sleep.
So yes, for the sleep quality, like I'm very sensitive to like breathing sounds and being rustled about and stuff. So I'm just like, I love my bed.
Wow.
So much. So much.
But I guess people only become normalized to these things if people talk about it.
Exactly. Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And so I guess one person would be like, well, you know, what about, you know, but a lot of people say like the bed should be used for 2 things, sex and sleep. That is it, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm getting this wrong.
I don't know.
But it's like 2 things, right?
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people would use it for like watching TV or being on their phone,
Working on their laptop, yeah.
But you're like, it's used for me to go to sleep away
Yes.
from you.
Yes.
With my night mask on.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But I think there's these conversations that, you know, we only hear from one side because we don't talk about them as much,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
But it hasn't decreased any other part of your relationship, sleeping in separate beds.
No, like we have a routine. We cuddle before bed. Like it's the whole thing.
You do everything and then you just go, right, I'm going to go to my bed.
Yeah.
Similar to, you know, going to your own house.
Yeah, exactly. But like way easier because you're already ready for bed. You don't need to get out of your PJs.
So I want to come back to one thing on women's health, which I'm interested to see like what your take on this is. So there was a study done last year.
Okay.
And it was around tampons.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to try and find it because I want to know, how do you use tampons first of all, or do you use like a cup? Because there's a lot of conversation around the heavy metals. And I'll explain this why. There was a Berkeley study last year, evaluated 16 metals and 30 tampons from 14 different brands. The metal concentrations varied by where the tampons were purchased. So whether it's here in the US or the EU or in the UK where I'm from, they looked at organic versus non-organic and store versus name brand. And they found that metals are present in all types of tampons. No category had consistently lower concentrations of all or most metals. Lead concentrations were higher in non-organic tampons, but arsenic was higher in organic tampons. So this is not for me to demonize tampons. I use tampons, to put it out there very clearly. But when I'm thinking about like your protocol and all the data, and I use the word obsessiveness because you are, right? You're like hyper nailing down on like what's affecting the body. Something I could never ask Bryan or Talmadge was this question.
Yeah.
So when it comes to your women's health and menstruation, how do you look at this area? And how do you approach it?
I want to preface this by saying that this is like totally personal opinion. So I don't know the research on cups, for example, and the difference between that and pads and all these other options. But personally, I try to avoid tampons at all costs. I just am skeptical that as we continue to get more data, we will just find more and more scary information. But again, I don't know. But yeah, I do try and avoid tampons at all costs.
So what do you use instead?
So I oscillate between just pads. I also do occasionally use tampons, like in moments where I'm like, I just want the extra security of like I'm maybe going to be out and about and I'm exercising, or I'm going to be in a situation where like I want more comfort that I'm not going to like bleed everywhere.
Yeah.
Then I'll use a tampon. And I kind of always feel a little uncomfortable about it. And then, yeah, occasionally use cups as well.
I think it's an important conversation to have.
I
One,
agree.
just for women. And I do not want to make this sound like I am demonizing tampons because I use them. It's just one of those things that I was wondering if you were tracking, if you had seen any data on it, or if there's something that was in conversation with the doctors, because I know that you have lots of doctors that are advising you and what their conversations like. Because until this study had come out, and it was a small study, right? It's a pilot study.
Yeah, exactly.
So again, like we have to take everything with a pinch of salt. But when I read this, I thought actually that's something that I've probably not been that aware of. And I'm someone who's always suffered with heavy periods. So,
That's
you know,
hard.
for me, it's,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes
Necessity.
thinking about a cup, I'm like, oh, is that gonna be as absorbent as a tampon? And yeah, you know, for me, I'm not recording my health data. So for me, I'm like, okay, well, I'm not thinking about it maybe as much as you, but it's something that I don't think women talk about very much.
Yeah, I agree.
And I've only had these conversations kind of off mic with friends
Yeah,
who have told
privately.
me, who have told me to use a cup.
Yeah.
And actually how much better they are for you.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're made of plastic.
Exactly.
So I don't know if there's
Exactly.
a micro. So God, you can really spin yourself. I'm spinning myself out in this conversation. Yeah,
Yes.
there's always going to be a trade-off.
Yes.
But I guess for you and the data you feel for your own opinion, anecdotally, that pads are.
Exactly. This is where we just need more data and more science. And all we can do in these moments is speculate. So I agree.
The moon cup is good for environment.
Right.
And you're not using any waste.
Right, exactly. I tend to, even though pads are very uncomfortable, I tend to try to use pads as much as possible just because it's the least invasive to my body. And in the realm of not having data, I find that it's like the most soothing in the sense of like I'm not putting something, and especially I try and get like organic ones that don't have any kind of scents associated with them and all the like nasty synthetic stuff that you can get in pads as well. But I just find that's like the most, like if you're going to not have data, you might as well have something that's not in your body. But then besides that, I use like a flex disc.
What's that?
It's like it's a cup essentially. Yeah. But it's disposable.
Okay.
So it's probably also bad for the environment. It probably has microplastics, probably has it's just like an endless rabbit hole. And yeah, I know it's scary and it sucks that we don't have good enough data.
I mean, I was literally sitting in a car with a friend last night because we went out for dinner and one person said, don't touch the receipt. It's got more microplastics in than anywhere. And I was literally in the car home laughing. I mean, obviously I'm into health, but it was just ironic because I was going, we can't breathe the air because we're currently in LA, right? So there's wildfires. So I'm like, the air is going to kill us. Then I'm like, the receipts or anything we touch is going to kill us.
Yeah.
You know, then anything that we drink, and it gets to this point where it can become so over-consuming.
Yeah.
And then you just think, well, anything I'm going to touch, use, put on my body essentially has something that is going to be detrimental.
Yeah.
You know, so you can get into a head spin.
You go into this like curve of like predictable response, which is like overwhelm, panic, like, oh my God, life is ending. And then you just kind of like normalize to it. And then you adjust accordingly. So like the receipts thing, same thing, like really bothered me when I first found out. And then now I'm just like, I just avoid them when I can. And if I do interact one, I'm like, okay, not a big deal. Like it's going to happen. At least I was doing it like 30% less than I was in the past, you know,
So you were meant to come in here last week and you got sick.
Yes.
And I think like we should just be honest about that, right? People will be like, oh, how did she get sick? Because she's meant to be following this optimized diet. One, like, how do you cope with when you get sick? Like, what's your protocol? Because I actually would find that really interesting.
Yeah. Do you want to hear the truth?
Yeah.
I had one night where I stayed up until like 3 a.m. And I just at home, I was just having a shitty day. I was just emotionally overwhelmed. And that's my like vice is I stay up late. And I was binge watching YouTube. And it was some stupid YouTube analysis of like Love is Blind. So like, yeah, I'm not perfect. And so I stayed up that late that night, and I swear I got sick like the day after, the next day or something like that. So I'm so sensitive to sleep now.
You were just exhausted.
Yeah, exactly.
You were just tired.
Yeah. So I think now I'm.
By the way, thank you for admitting that.
Yeah.
You've just become human to everyone. I also have binge watched Love is Blind, and I've never admitted that either, but I'm with you now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just like a fantastic TV show.
Yeah. I mean, I can't believe we're talking about this, but yeah. On Live Our Be Well, first time this has been mentioned.
Love it.
But it's the humanization, right? So you felt overwhelmed. Yes. Like for you, your emotional draw was to stay up till 3 and watch something shitty on TV. Did you keep your boyfriend up?
No, he went to sleep. He's on his own health
journey. I love this. That's why separate beds help.
Exactly.
Like, I'm going to go and watch Love is Blind.
Yes.
You sleep.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so then you woke up and you didn't feel right. So what did you do? How did you?
So I woke up and I was like, oh no, what have I done? I feel like shit about myself. Like I've done this whole thing, the whole journey. And then I started to feel unwell, and so yeah, I was just really on top of my health from then onwards because I was like, I need to now just focus on recovery, hydration. I use Neurosim, which is you put it on your tragus here, and activates your sympathetic nervous system, your parasympathetic nervous system.
Well, it's like a little gadget.
Yeah, it's like a little device that you like hook on
Oh,
here,
that's one I would buy.
and then it stimulates. And so Bryan, Talmud, and I all use that. If we ever start to feel the inkling of being unwell, like slap it on, and usually it's very good at like knocking it out. I still got sick, but I still did that every 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour at night for like a good 5 days. Like the moment I started to feel sick, and then as I was recovering as well. So yeah, just sometimes you get sick.
Yeah, but also women have so many more intense emotions than men.
Right.
I mean, I know I have said that from a very anecdotal point of view, and that's probably very wrong for me to say that. But in the sense of like, men don't have such hormone fluctuations. So yes, men will have moods where they feel happy and they feel sad, they feel emotional, they feel stressed. But they don't have the hormone levels that we have. So that has a bigger impact on in our moods, right? So how have you dealt with kind of working with that through this?
I see it as a separate function that's going to happen in parallel, no matter what I do. And then I see my ability to get the basics as just my foundational toolbox, my armor against being really overwhelmed when I'm overwhelmed. So like, I know if I don't get enough sleep or if I have poor quality sleep, the next day I'm going to be a little bit more irritable. And so I'll catch myself in that irritability and I'll be like, Kate, you're just tired. Like, it's okay. You need a good night's sleep tonight and you're going to be. So that's how kind of the relationship. I see them as interconnected, but like two separate functions. I'm never going to be able to like solve either one of them without the other, if that makes sense.
And how have you dealt with I don't know if you've had any backlash. I mean, I know Bryan gets backlash all the time.
Yeah.
But how have you dealt with putting yourself out in the public?
I feel like I've been really lucky where people have been really nice online, and all of the more negative comments, I view them as like kind of expected. Like people, will insinuate that I'm just some person that's taking advantage of Bryan, or that I didn't work that hard to get in this role that I'm in. Because I think a lot of people expect a business person and co-founder to look a certain way, not just even from like male, female, like they should be a man, but like a female co-founder. I think I come across as like quite maybe softer than they expected or something like that. And so they think this must not add up and she must not be that person. And I honestly love it for two reasons. One is that I think people have these thoughts in their heads anyway. And so I get really a lot of soothing from seeing them in the comment section, because I'm like, cool, someone's talking to me honestly and transparently, because I think these things in my head, but people deny them if you try and bring them up. So I'm like, at least you're telling it to me straight. So that's great. And the second thing is like, the more we have these open conversations, the more I'll be able to enact change. Like I really don't want to lose the part of myself that is highly feminine and relatable and emotional and inquisitive and soft and not like dominating and all these other things in order to fit some stereotype. I'd rather have the stereotype start to shift toward this is what a co-founder of a successful business can look like.
I mean, I love that you're a woman co-founder.
Me too.
Just for anyone who's like, how did she get to this job and how did she connect with Bryan? Because she doesn't sound American.
Yeah.
So like, what was the journey to actually getting to the position that you are now with a CMO as well, I want to say, as well as co-founder. And I say CMO only because, when I first was speaking to Bryan, his platform wasn't as big as it is now. And now he's got a Netflix show and his YouTube has gone wild and his Instagram has gone wild. And you've really played on some of the negative comments, which is super smart. And so how did you at 27 or 26 get to that?
Yeah. So I moved to the States 9 years ago. I was working in fashion. I was 20 years old.
I did not know that.
Yeah. I moved to New York and I wanted to transition to tech, but coming from fashion, that's a very hard transition to make. And so I was kind of like sitting and waiting. And in the meantime, I was watching AI start to become part of the mainstream conversation. This was 9 years ago. So it was like a different kind of AI than what we consider AI today. And I felt like AI was going to come, it was going to disrupt everything. And that the only way to proceed forward as a species would be to merge with AI in some capacity, any capacity. Just we need to ride on the tailwinds of AI as opposed to trying to control it. Like it is going to happen. And I felt like there was no one really talking about that out there in the world and actually doing something about it. So like there's a couple of like thought leaders, Ray Kurzweil, like great people who are writing books and talking about this, but no one actually creating business and I'm someone who's like action oriented, like let's go. And I was sitting in a cafe in Brooklyn, in New York, and I got an email in my inbox and it had a quote from Bryan Johnson, whom at the time was, I would dare say, like not a well-known person at all, very in the tech community, perhaps well-known, but not in mainstream. And it had this quote from him that talked about merging AI with humans. And I was like, that's what, like, oh my gosh, someone's talking about it. And so I thought, like, I just had this intuitive feeling that I should throw my energy toward that person. And again, I think this is also something different about the way that I like to be a business person, is that I love being alongside someone else in the journey. Like, I'm not as interested in being like a completely solo founder out there, like running in one direction. And so I messaged him on every platform, like LinkedIn, Medium, social media, email, saying like, I want to work with you. How can I work with you? I was 20, so I didn't have any experience, but I was like, I'm just, classic hustle culture where I was like, I'll just do anything. And I never heard back. And then years would go by and I would just keep pinging him for years and years and years. I was working in luxury fashion in New York. Then the North Face approached me, brought me out to San Francisco, and I was helping run a 70-person design team out in San Francisco. And so I was like kind of going up this corporate ladder and like making good money and all that kind of stuff. And then eventually an assistant position became available at Kernel, the brain computer interface company that Bryan started. And I was like, I think I need to apply for that, even though it's going to be a pay cut, title cut, big change in trajectory, big risk for me to take. I'm always been ambitious. And so I knew that whatever change I make, it needs to go somewhere. And so I was like, I'm going to put my eggs in this basket. I'm going to apply for this role. And then I got rejected multiple times. Long story short, I eventually got on a phone call with Bryan, and then immediately we clicked and I moved out here to LA.
And what's your relationship now like with Bryan? Like, what have you learned from him?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I moved to LA, and then immediately, obviously, I took on so much more responsibility. And one day, it was a Saturday, an idea came into my mind, which was that Bryan was optimizing his health. And I thought, what if we just made this a public science experiment where we just put everything out there? And so I mocked up this dashboard where it had like, here's my stool sample results, here's my blood work, here's my heart rate, live time, like here's everything about my health, and just make him like a public observable figure in health, an avatar that people can like voyeuristically follow along with. And we started doing that, and like a year goes by, no one paying any attention, and then overnight it just blew up and just kept blowing up.
What was it that made him blow? Because I remember, I think he spoke about his erections for the first time on our show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I remember him just being like, yeah, we've just had this data in, and he was talking about his erections and how they're staying longer. And I asked him about dating, and he was like, come on with the slit. And it was like, for me, I didn't expect it to go that way. Yeah. For me, I was more kind of about health, and it was just amazing. I mean, he really opened up.
Yeah.
That's when I started to see a spring, but I don't know if that coincides with when you saw a spring. Like, what was
that?
It?
Was after. That was so November of 2022 was the first time we went viral. A guy in Venice, LA, Max Hurton, he wrote a tweet thread summarizing everything we published online, and it went viral, got 40 million views in like a few days, and it was over Thanksgiving. That was our first experience of like oh my gosh, it was so scary. It was like, I'm like, yeah, it was a lot. We were not prepared for it, but like, it was so much fun as well at the same time. And then a few months later, the Bloomberg article came out, and that was like the guy tries to be 18 years old again. And that also then, and so then every since then, it's essentially been some form of virality.
Yeah. And you really play into it, don't you?
Yes.
You really play into kind of the negative comments and, even kind of calling it a cult.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is, I guess, a marketing strategy to kind of get it to show that it's a bit different, in the sense of like, we are basically going to admit that we are trying to get people to change their lives and follow us. But I guess cult just feels like quite an intense word.
Yes. I think people pattern match what we do to that. And instead of us being like, no, like we're apologetic, we're not anything like that. We're just like, well, yeah, we're not too dissimilar from a cult. Like, in fact, I'd probably call us a religion, if anything. We're a lifestyle of behaviors. We're a belief system. We think that, everyone would benefit from this. And instead of promising the afterlife, we're promising a longer this life, And so it's very similar in a lot of ways. So we just kind of we're two people that are playing the longest game possible. And so all the hate that we experience on a day-to-day, we know will wash away with time. And so if you're thinking along a 100-year time span, like I personally think that I'm not religious in the traditional sense of what people consider now, But I do think that religion has been the number one way to get huge communities of people to change their behavior and for society to change. Like, what an effective tool. So if health is the next big religion, I think that's a fantastic religion.
So you've had 5,000 people beta test. Is this correct? The blueprint?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I love that you looked at me and I thought, oh my gosh, have I misread information online?
No. I heard beta test. I said beta test. And so I was just like translating.
UK, American.
Yeah, or Australian.
Australian, yeah, okay.
I don't even know.
People think I'm Australian in America. I don't think I sound very Australian.
Well, I've been here for 9 years now. I'm wondering, is it beta or beta in Australia? I have no idea.
Beta.
Yeah.
Tomato.
Right.
So you've been beta testing 5,000 people and participants on Blueprint.
Yes.
What has been the outcome? What's been the uptake? I've seen some like crazy YouTube videos of people are like very excited about doing this. Like, you're now taking this out more widely. What have you got any data back?
Yes.
Tell me.
Yeah. So I think there's a whole bunch of like disclaimers I need to say before I say this. Like, this has not been FDA reviewed. Like, it's the data set is like, I don't know. It's people who have done this. They've kept with their existing lifestyle. We didn't ask them to change anything else. Of that cohort, we had a couple of our employees part of it. So there's like some, like, you need to make these disclaimers so that people are aware. But the science has been really positive. So I wish I remember the data off the top of my head, but things like depression improved, anxiety improved, musculoskeletal health improved, cardiovascular health improved, liver dysfunction was resolved in, I think it was like, in a percentage of people, like a decent amount of people. And these are all statistically significant changes. So across the board, it was like incredible change for people who've done it.
And I guess that was quite exciting.
It worked.
Seeing like, I mean, obviously there's all people that are like so actively wanting to change their health, which is a huge consideration to take place when you get these results. But, you know, I guess that's showing that there's a larger movement now of people changing over to this style.
In that vein, also, like, imagine if you implemented this into like middle America population, maybe that isn't as interested in health, for example, or where there's food deserts, like maybe the change would be more drastic.
Would you try and do that?
I mean, I would love to. Yeah. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. That's why we price everything, like, where we're essentially just trying to get it to the place where we can scale it. So it's not like this is a money-making venture where we're like profiting from this. It's like we are trying to make this available in Costco. Like, we want to make this available for every person on planet Earth, like starting with these communities of people who are interested and then scaling out to like middle America or everywhere else in the world.
So what's been the feedback? Like, if someone's listening to this going, okay, well, there's 5,000 people that tried it. It's now not Bryan, Talmadge, or Kate. What's the feedback that you're getting from these people? Because I'm thinking about people that want to implement, you know, a blueprint diet into their lifestyle. What's the feedback that you've got on what's been the easiest thing to do, the hardest? You know, what data can you share with us on their journey?
I think most people aren't aware of how easy it is, like the actual basics of health, like in terms of lift, you know, so like the supplements we have, it's very easy to take, that kind of stuff. Prioritizing sleep, like once you know how to optimize your sleep, it's again easy to do once you can like get your head around it. Once you go through that existential crisis.
So what do you give them as a protocol for their sleep? What's their thing?
So there's like 5 things you want to do for your sleep. One is have a wind down routine before bed. So avoid blue light, read a book, that kind of stuff. Like, don't be active during that time period. Have a consistent bedtime. Optimize your sleep environment. So try to eliminate blue light. So for example, like, don't have overhead lights that are really blue in nature. Try to have more orange hued lights. Avoid caffeine or stimulants close to bed. Avoid alcohol at all costs. So there's like a simple checklist of things that you can do to optimize your sleep. And then the quality metrics you want to look for is around about 2 hours of deep sleep, 2 hours of REM, and 30 minutes or less of awake time per sleep cycle.
So once you've kind of got these basics, then these are the things that you're looking for.
Yes.
So for people that really want to like take Blueprint, maybe never heard of it before, who after listening to this, who maybe is a woman and thinks that the Bryan Johnson is so far from them that they couldn't adapt. Like, what is from you doing this as a woman in a less extreme way, we've now found out, although you do have an air purifier here that I also want to mention.
How are we doing? We've got good air quality.
Have we got good air quality?
We've got good air quality,
Yeah, because you did walk in with a mug and a device, and I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
And it's an air quality pure. Am I okay?
You're good. You're doing really great in here. Even the humidity is good in here.
Right. See, I made this perfect.
You've
for
done
you.
fantastic. Yeah. Which is
What-
honestly saying something because the air quality outside is bad right now. So this is genuinely impressive that the environment.
We've got the
here
air
is good.
purifiers
Yes.
going on in here
Yeah.
to make sure we've got clean air. But we have just been through fires. That's why
Yes.
I don't normally live with an air purifier. Maybe I should.
You should, like, because before the fires, LA air quality was as bad as it is now, according to the same metrics.
And London? Yeah, I guess London's not going to be.
We can
great
look it up.
either.
Do you
We
want
should
to?
look- Yeah.
Yeah, just quick look.
Yeah, let's have a quick look.
Let me-
Air
I don't
quality
wanna
in
spill this.
London. LA.
Yeah, so I'll say that the two apps that I check regularly is UV. So I have a little widget on the side of my phone. God, I hate it when they like come up and they're like, redeem your free trial. And so it like has what the
Okay, so this is right. So what camera should I go on? This camera. So if you're looking now, we've got a 3.4. So we've got a moderate air quality in Los
oh no,
Angeles.
that's UV.
Oh, that's UV. I
yeah,
thought it's
sunlight.
really low.
Yeah, it's sunlight.
I was like, normally it's like
Yeah.
54 here. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is the sunlight. Okay.
Here right now.
Right now.
So that's like
okay.
that's first widget.
And this app is what?
I don't even know what it's called. Let me check. UV index.
UV index.
It's
okay.
free. And then, so yeah, I have that as a widget on my phone so that when I wake up, I just scroll to the left and just check. So I know if, so for example, I went back to Australia recently for the first time and oh my gosh, my hometown, the average UV is like 13 there every day. So like you wouldn't even guess it. It's raining, it's overcast, and me and my friends are there and I'm like freaking out. Like, you guys, like it is so bad. We all need hats, like really big, vibrant hats right now. We need to be putting on sunscreen, etc.
I've only seen people get 3rd-degree burns in Australia. And I actually remember it was a really overcast day. I went traveling to Australia when I was 18.
Yeah, cool.
And did the whole kind of
And you got so
Sydney all the way up. Well, I didn't, but
Okay.
I wore. I was modeling.
Oh, okay,
I,
so you knew.
in my brain, but I was wearing a cap and had factor 50, but it was hyper overcast.
Yeah.
And I remember I wasn't outside for very long, but I did put factor 50 on. And I remember my friend being like, you don't need to put that on. It's overcast. And this is bearing in mind like nearly 20 years ago,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So health information is not as,
Yeah.
especially it's not very cool. And she got so burnt. A guy that we were with got 3rd-degree burns.
Yeah.
I mean, I got a tan and I
Yeah.
still had 50 on. And
Yeah.
it was pure overcast.
Bad. It's really, really bad.
Yeah.
And so I grew up going to the beach at midday to go lie and get a tan on the beach, because that was like, my sister was 6 years older than me and she loved being tan, and so I loved being tan as a result.
Did you used to put oil on?
No, thank God.
That's what
Thank
people in the
God.
UK did.
Yeah, but we didn't need to, because you just lie there for like 10 minutes and you're like
Yeah.
toasty. Yeah, so to think that I was getting that level of UV exposure every single day, like every day I went to school, and if I wasn't wearing a hat, I'd be getting that exposure. It's just mind-blowing
Wow.
to me.
You've got your Live Well Be Well hat now, so you can wear that.
Yeah, thanks. But we did my UV damage on the multispectral imaging machine, and it was like atrocious. So it does, even though you can't see it yet, as I get older, it'll continue to like express itself essentially, and I'll
In the
I'll
brown
start-
spots
Yes.
and everything. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got the UV, and then what's the air quality? Let's.
And then we're looking at London.
What am I going back to?
It's not horrible. It's definitely not great. So I would say it looks like it's like an average of around 77 right now. You can see it's yellow, but you really,
Oh wow. Okay. So this is, if you can see on YouTube, you've got all these little dots all over.
yeah.
That basically this is showing you like the air quality.
Yeah, right now
Of-
in London,
Wow. Okay.
according to a variety of metrics.
So we've got like 71 to 60. Okay. Let's look at LA.
Yeah.
So
And
let's
then-
just.
And then, so it changes each day, so you definitely want to monitor it.
And then what do you do when the air quality is bad?
Cry. I cry. Oh. So this is downtown. I mean, I'll just zoom out so you can see kind of like where we are and downtown LA.
Oh wow. Okay. So we are high.
We're double.
We're double. We're like 104, 110. Okay, so this is the difference with LA right now. So London's looking pretty good
Don't be fooled.
compared to London.
Compared to this?
LA.
But still too much.
It's still. So what
Too much.
does one do
Yeah,
when they
so-
are going to breathe in toxic air?
The main thing is that when you're in your environment that you can control, like your house, to have air filters.
But what if that's not available for someone because they're too expensive to run?
It depends on your situation. So let's say you have a AC system. Running that will help a lot.
London doesn't have AC.
Oh, really?
No.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I don't think I know one person that's got an AC in London. They might be American and they might have had it installed, but no, we don't have ACs.
This device here is like, I think it's around $150. So that's an option. You can at least monitor it.
Yeah.
The best solution is to get a portable filter.
Okay. And
But
how many
it does
do you
cost
have?
money. I've got a lot in my house. Yeah, I've got like almost 2 in every room. Like
2?
I've really prioritized air quality. The air quality in my house is like 0 to 3.
Wow.
Yeah. The weirdest thing happened this morning, though. When I woke up this morning around 8:30, one of my air filters was just like, it's 155 inside. And I was like, what is going on? So something happened during that time, but then it cleared it out and then it was
And
all
then
good.
it reset again. Yeah. Okay. So for somebody now listening to this going, right.
And just really quickly, like I hung out with a friend this morning. I brought a mask because we were meeting outside. And so I wore a mask because I don't want to be outside in this. So I don't exercise at the moment outside.
Do you think it makes a difference? I'm really trying to think about this because it can go through your eyes, go through your ears. It can like seep through so many different areas. I'm thinking, is a mask that protective?
I couldn't answer that with confidence unless looking at the data. I don't know if the data even has answers on that. I don't think
it does.
I will
think it's just my theory.
Yeah. I understand that. Like, I hate when, your brain will just come up with and it's kind of like you just want to give up because like there's all these other ways of thinking about things that we just don't know. That's why you always have to bring back to like, what do we know? Just operate in that. Yes. And that's why when we were talking off camera about like, do we move from LA and all this kind of stuff? Right now, what we do know is that the air quality is usually this bad-ish in LA according to these metrics. Is there other things in the air right now like asbestos and stuff from the fires? Maybe. Maybe in a way that it's affecting our health, but like I don't know if we know with confidence. And so I hate to work off of unknowns.
Yeah.
So just work off what we do know. Otherwise you'll be spinning constantly.
Yeah. I mean, we had this conversation because of the September the 11th.
Yeah.
And the amount of people like, apparently, please, this is not quotable at all. I have not researched this. I never normally put out facts I haven't researched, but somebody I spoke to last night was saying 1 in 8 people got cancer post in a 25-mile radius. I don't know if that's true. Yeah. It might not be true. This could be completely random data, but it's that what we do know that cancer rates did increase after September the 11th. And I guess that's what people are thinking about in LA with the wildfires. Yeah. But again, that was my first question to you.
And one thing I'll add on this is, so we just recently went to India. If India as a country solved cancer or they solved air pollution, they would save more years of life by solving pollution than cancer.
Wow.
So just as like how much we should be worried about things like pollution, we scientifically know will cut off more years of life in India than cancer.
That's massive.
Yeah. Because it causes things like cancer.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's toxic and it's causing
mental deterioration.
The whole point. That's what cancer is.
Cognitive decline, that kind of stuff.
So for someone listening to this being like, okay, especially as a woman, what are the 3 things that they should implement to support their health that you have found to be really, really helpful? And I'd love for one of those things to be an emotional support.
I firstly would focus on getting the basics right. So again, to stop the spiral of everything we don't know, start with what you do know, which is that sleep, diet, and exercise has the largest yields. So if you're not getting 8 hours, and a lot of people think that they are getting 8 hours a night, and then they actually stop and look and they realize, oh, I get 8 hours most nights. And then you stop and they look and they're like, oh, 3 times out of 7 days a week I get and then they stop and look and the quality isn't that good. So like really like taking a moment and being like, I'm going to observe my sleep, whether it's through a wearable, depending on if you can afford it or not. But really start to observe your sleep quality. And then once you feel like you've mastered that, then move on to diet and exercise. And then once you've mastered that, you can start to fine tune, okay, now I can start to play with my diet as a woman. Like I want to increase my protein in my luteal phase, where you might have some protein breakdown, for example, in your muscles. And so you want to increase your protein. Or you can have more carbs in the first half of your cycle of follicular because you've got greater insulin resistance. So those kinds of things you can optimize once you've got your basics down pat, because those are really going to have the biggest impact. And then as far as emotional support, I would say treat it like a 10-year journey. Don't think that you're going to be able to change overnight, because that's such a tall order.
That's what happened to you, right?
That's what happened to me. And I was in a unique circumstance where I had all the infrastructure and support around me to be able to even do that to begin with. And I was also doing it for reasons larger than myself. So if you're someone who's wanting to improve your health, like just take the smallest of steps each day. I remember, like, as simple as it is, like when I first started like flossing every single day, how hard it was for me to do that as a practice every single day. It's like, so you go through this curve always of like where you're, it's really difficult. It feels impossible. You like just have to keep pushing. And then it slowly like slides into your routine, and then you can incorporate it. Same thing with like measuring my basal temperature every day. Like it just felt really insurmountable. So I'd say like just slowly incorporate all these baby things and like let yourself sink into the routine and don't beat yourself up along the way.
I think it's so important, because I think what I see with my patients and what I see with myself is that, you know, we're kind of in the first half of the year and everyone's trying to make such big changes at one go. And also we are so overwhelmed with so much health. I mean, I'm overwhelmed and I'm in the field. So, you know, if you're not in the field, then it feels just too much.
Yeah.
And I think what I try to say to people is like, they're changing their diet, just pick up one new vegetable a week.
Yes.
And use that.
Yes.
By the end of the month, you've had 4 new vegetables on top of the other things. You know, try to just do small things that don't feel overwhelming, because as you said, it is a long process. And actually the stress of trying to keep up to perfection can increase our all of our hormones, our stress hormones, you know, can dampen our immunity, and it can actually kind of have a opposite effect. So I just try to say, don't beat yourself up along the way. And I feel like this is a very different conversation that I might have had with Bryan, who is hyper-focused on his mission, with his why, where he's going. Whereas you're like, I'm in this experiment, but I'm fluxing to how I can do this to best support myself without. But I guess this is something you're still learning, right? This is something that you're, and what has been the biggest learning experience from yourself as an individual? When you look back on your last year and a half, what would you say is like, what have you learned about yourself the most?
How hard it is to focus on myself. Like when that's just your baseline default, like it can hide from you a little bit. But then when you're trying to improve your health, for me, I was forced to like come face to face with like, I want to improve myself, which means I need to focus on myself, which is very scary for someone like myself. So kind of like learning the areas that make me panic inside, and then learning how to navigate around them. So I'd say that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I think we all struggle with that.
Yeah.
Day to day. So Kate, I wonder what your answer will be to this is, but what does live well, be well mean to you?
I would say it is living with a sense of peace internally. It's being reconciled with what you want and what you do on a day-to-day basis. So if you're not at the stage where you want to be focusing on your health, that's okay. Like maybe you're just not there yet. And so living well, be well for me is like just living in alignment with self. Yeah.
I love that. The peace inside is a very like Buddhist philosophy answer to give. But I think we're all constantly chasing what that could be, right? To trying to find what that solace is inside of us.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
Yeah. And that chase is in my mind okay too. Like that's a form of desire. So I desire to be a healthier version of myself, which just means like I'm trying to close that gap between what I want and where I am right now. And like that process is a peace reconciliation process. And so my whole goal in life is always to kind of just like continue to follow my own desire. And right now I'm trying very narrowly to figure out how to focus on myself more and how to be, I have a word each year for like what oh my God, I haven't done it for 2025. I can't believe it.
This is what I wrote on my Substack.
Oh,
my word's feel.
What does it feel?
Feel.
Okay.
So I become more connected to what my decisions are, as opposed to intellectualizing it and disconnecting from my body.
Yeah. Cool.
So what would yours be?
I haven't figured out for 2024. I literally have forgotten about it until right now. Good note. For 2024, it was selfish. Like I loved how even aggressive that word is, but I just wanted to be comfortable feeling selfish. So that's what my whole health journey has really been about.
It's so misinterpreted, that word.
Yeah.
You know, because selfish can lean in towards narcissistic.
Correct.
Which I don't think is right. If you can look after yourself, you actually become less selfish. But you can also be very selfish and actually
Yeah.
be very self-absorbed.
Yeah.
But I guess your way is, if I put my oxygen mask on first, I
Yes.
can help other people, right?
Exactly. And for me, the word selfish kicks up such an emotional response inside myself, and that's why I want to get more comfortable with being perceived externally and perceiving myself as being selfish, because ultimately I'm indexing too heavy on the other end and I'm being too selfless, and it's coming at the cost of all these things. So like I need to become more comfortable with the idea of like, you see it as selfish, okay, that's fine. You
Yeah.
know?
It's the intention behind it.
Yes.
I think that's the biggest thing. If we have the intention that we're not harming anyone else and we're just doing this because we need to support ourselves in this moment, that's not selfish.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
So much. Thank you
Yeah.
for just talking about women's health, talking about it in a human way. I think this might be quite an unexpected episode for some people.
I think so too. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hope you've enjoyed it.
Thanks. I really have. I really appreciate you creating the space for me to be myself. As you said, I haven't really done many conversations. So yeah, you made me feel very comfortable. So thank you.
I can't wait to see the rest of your journey.
Yeah.
The last question before you go, actually, how long do you think you'll do this for?
I don't think there is a end to the self-improvement journey.
Amazing. Well, if you have a Don't Die day, can you invite me?
Mm-hmm. Or a die day.
Or die day, that's it. Yeah, all your days. Oh my gosh, that was
like-
such a dyslexic moment.
No, I love
If
it.
you have a die day,
Mm-hmm.
can I have an invite?
Yes. You'll
Okay,
be
great.
first on it.
Great.
Yeah, we'll lead it together.
Thank you.